Siaka Probyn Stevens, a railway worker who rose to lead a nation. For nearly 2 decades he shaped Sierra Leone's politics, builder to some, autocrat to others. This is the story of power, patronage, and a fragile post-colonial state. Siaka Probyn Stevens was born on the 24th of August 1905 in Moyamba, in what was then British Sierra Leone. He left formal schooling early and entered the colonial workforce, first as a policeman and later as a railway and mining employee in the Marampa iron ore districts. Stevens' early life was defined by labor, local organizing, and a growing interest in politics. In the 1940s, Stevens became active in labor organizations and was appointed to represent workers in the Protectorate Assembly in 1946, his first major political appointment and the beginning of a long public life. Through the 1950s and early 1960s, Stevens rose through the ranks, elected to the colonial legislature, serving as Minister of Mines, Lands and Labor, and later as an MP and Mayor of Freetown. He combined populist appeals in the interior provinces with city politics, building a distinctive political base. In 1962, Stevens helped consolidate the All People's Congress, the APC, which became the principal rival to the Sierra Leone People's Party. By the mid-1960s, he was the APC's dominant figure, a man who knew how to turn local loyalties into national power. The 1967 general election was a turning point. The APC narrowly defeated the incumbent SLPP, but victory did not bring calm. Within hours, the army intervened, and the country entered a period of coup and counter-coups. A successful restoration of civilian rule in 1968, assisted by senior military figures, paved the way for Stevens to assume the premiership. He served as prime minister from 1968 to 1971, navigating a tense mix of parliamentary maneuvers and extra-parliamentary influence. In April 1971, Stevens presided over a constitutional transformation. Sierra Leone became a republic. He moved from prime minister to president, consolidating executive authority. The early 1970s were marked by political reshaping. New constitutions, shifting alliances, and a steady centralization of power. Throughout the 1970s, Stevens consolidated his rule. Elections became less competitive, opposition parties faced bans, arrests, and intimidation. In 1978, a referendum produced a one-party constitution, formally making the APC the sole legal party, a move Stevens defended as an African answer to Western multi-party politics. Critics argued that the referendum result, reported as overwhelmingly in favor, was implausible and marred by fraud. Historians and analysts would later characterize the period as a patrimonial regime, state resources used to reward supporters, while dissent was curtailed. Stevens's rule coincided with economic challenges. Sierra Leone faced mounting external debt, declining commodity revenues, and public discontent. Internationally, Stevens remained active. He chaired the Organization of African Unity in 1980-81 and helped pioneer the Mono River Union with Liberia and Guinea, efforts aimed at regional cooperation. By the early 1980s, allegations of corruption, nepotism, and human rights abuses had hardened. Despite criticism, Stevens remained in office until 1985, when he stepped down and handpicked Major General Joseph Saidu Momo as his successor. Stevens died in 1988 in Freetown. But historians point to substantial failures: the entrenchment of patronage, widespread corruption, economic mismanagement, and political repression. These dynamics hollowed out public institutions and set the stage for later instability. For many Sierra Leoneans, the Stevens years remain a warning about the costs of unaccountable power. What can we learn from Siaka Stevens? That states emerging from empire can choose different paths: institution building or personal rule. Stevens shows how political survival can produce short-term order at the expense of long-term resilience. The lesson, perhaps, is the value of accountable institutions, transparent leadership, and politics that serve citizens, not just patrons.